Well, hello everybody again. Another Wild Inside. And well, I'm not going to say any more because Robyn's got a fantastic quote, which absolutely is going to set us off for today.
And this is a quote from Robert Bligh, and it's about being wild. And he says, "To be wild is not to be crazy or psychotic. True wildness is a love of nature, a delight in silence, a voice free to say spontaneous things, and the exuberant curiosity in the face of the unknown." And when I first came across that, it was just, yes, that's exactly it. That's exactly what true wildness means to me. We often think of wildness and the way that it's used in society, isn't it, is often
Yeah.
that crazy and psychotic and messy and it's used in a negative kind of
Yeah, sort of
connotation quite
derogatory
often.
way, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Whereas working with animals and being out in nature, yes, it can look a bit chaotic at times, but there's always a method in its madness. And animals, wild animals, aren't the crazy. When we see an animal and we label it as wild because of its behavior, that isn't its natural behavior. That's its imprisoned behavior.
Yeah.
That's it's I'm caught in a corner and I'm in fight or flight. I'm trying to survive.
Yeah.
But if you look at animals in the wild, they're always conserving energy.
Yeah.
And if you look at prey animals, they rest and they get into rest quite quickly
Yeah.
because they know that it's not good to expend energy unless you need to, because you want to hold it ready for those times when predators here, right, off we go, or whatever. So a
Absolutely.
lot of the time, wild is actually very, very peaceful.
Yeah. That's my feeling too. And I love that about the imprisoned animal
Mm.
because for me, that's what this week has been very much about freedom for me. And people have been coming to me and saying, well, I just saying it to Robyn earlier, they say, I want to work with you because you always seem to be happy. And Robyn said to me, she said, I'm not sure that happiness is quite the right word, but it's okay. Um, Perhaps it's joyful because, of course, I have bad days. We all have bad days, and it can be for all sorts of reasons, and it's just not a good day. But inside me, I still feel joyful. And I do that, at least I feel I do that, because I'm free to make choices. And I know I can make choices, that it's okay to make choices. And I'm not going to be, well, even if somebody tries to cut me off, it's just like, okay, that's your way. This is mine. That's fine.
Because we always get to choose our responses when we are conscious, when we
Yes,
sometimes we're caught in reaction, aren't we? Because
absolutely. Yeah.
buttons get pressed. And even saying we're having a good day or a bad day, that in itself is us applying meaning to
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
And we do it, being Brits, we do it with the weather.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
it's a miserable day. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful day. It's just a day. And having moved to Wales and having horses and a dog who needs a lot of walking, I get outdoors every day, no matter what the weather is, whether it's blowing a gale or it's tipping it down with rain or it's snowing or whatever. And I have found that that has done me so much good.
Yeah.
It's done so much good for my mental health, my well-being generally. You know, it's the movement, it's the fresh air, it's the natural light. It's made such a difference to my life. Whereas previously, when I lived in the city, I lived in Bristol, and it was just, oh, it's grey outside, I don't want to go out today.
Yeah.
And I made the choice to stay indoors.
Yeah.
And now I still have that choice, other than that the animals then wouldn't get fed, and wouldn't want to do that. But I know that getting outdoors has helped me.
Yes.
That's not to say it's for everybody, but it has helped me. And because I know that, I have that choice.
Yeah.
And I think it's that consciousness, it's that awareness that we have choice and that we put meaning on things.
Yes.
Things just are. The
Yeah.
day just is, whether it feels like a good day or it feels like a
It's
bad
just
day, it
rain.
just is a
It's
day.
just snow. It's
And
just hot.
we could just say, yeah, it's a challenging day.
Yeah.
Today I've had a lot of challenges. Today has really tested me. But that doesn't make it a bad day.
No.
those are some of the best days when you look back and think, oh gosh, I learned so much on that day, or that helped me to grow.
Yeah.
That revealed so many things to me.
And if I hadn't had that conversation with somebody, and if we hadn't disagreed about something or another, actually, I mean, it happens for me sometimes, is that I know the person better because we've gone and said, well, I don't think like that. I don't agree with that. And then they come back and, you know, we're okay about it, but we're both feeling quite passionate about our own stance.
And I think in that we learn more about ourselves as well as about the other person.
Yeah.
And I have 2 horses here. One of them is the sweetest, beautifulest, terrible English, mare. And she's lovely to be around. And I have learned things from her, but I've learned so much more from the gelding, who's a challenging teenager, shall we say.
He has attitude.
Oh, he has attitude in spades. But he teaches me so much more.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. They don't teach us about themselves only,
No.
or even mostly. What they teach us mostly is ourselves.
Yeah.
And, you know, when he presses my buttons and I suddenly, oh gosh, there's another button. I wonder what that's all about. And that comes back to what Robert Bligh was saying, that curiosity. And I love curiosity. Previously in my old existence, it would have been, oh, that's bad and I don't like that and that's wrong. But now it's just, oh, that's interesting. I wonder why.
And it's sort of like, why did I do that? What made me, what, you know, she only said your hair looks a bit rubbish today. What's up? You know, why did I suddenly go,
oh, where did that come from?
And you think, what happened? You know, what did that come from? What was that about? That I've got, I live with a cat, as most people know. And other end of the size scale from horses, you know, she's only about this big, but she has attitude.
But they do, don't they? Cats are amazing.
She is particularly so. I've always had cats, and the last pair of girls that I had were much more gentle than she, although one of them was quite feral, but she was much more gentle. Whereas Kellen is sort of like, and I learned so much from her because she will demand something of me, or she'll want to, like, there I am, I'm trying to get some work done with a laptop on my lap, and that's quite the wrong laptop, of course, for me to have at that moment. I should be having a small black furry one.
Absolutely.
Doesn't work the same, but there you go. And I've tried plugging the tail in, but it doesn't work. But so she'll come along and she'll, oi, meow, meow, meow. I've got to do some work. Why now? I've got to do this work. I've got to finish this now. And sometimes, like, you've got to finish this email, or, you know, you're just doing some accounts and you can't get off the bank for the moment because then you'll have to go all back in again and all this kind of stuff. And you have to say, look, no, give me 5 and I'll be with you. And I know I'm saying it to a cat, and maybe some of you out there would sort of say, well, the cat doesn't understand, though I think most of you will be saying, yeah, we know that one. But I'm also thinking, what if that was somebody on the phone, or somebody who came to the door, or somebody else came in the room? And how would I say that? Would I say it the same? Because I'm not rude to the cat. I have to finish this now. Give me 5. Can I do that to a person? And yes, actually, I can. And that's part of the, like, freedom of the choice, that, like, not now. Love you, love to see you, all that stuff. But right now, I need this. I will be with you in 5. And I feel that's a choice a lot of people don't feel they've got sometimes. What do you think?
I think quite often we don't feel that we can say no.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. And it'll probably be something in our history that we've tried to say no in the past and it hasn't gone well. Or we've tried to stand up for ourselves and to be authentic and in our own sovereignty, our own true nature, and it hasn't gone well. And so it feels threatening even to try to do that again. It feels scary, it feels vulnerable, it feels exposed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So absolutely, I think that's quite a common thing. I posted a while ago about being able to say no, and I had quite a few people responding and saying that it really resonated with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was either somewhere that they'd been and they could understand exactly what that feels like, or that was somewhere that they currently are.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had the same thing, and I'm not really sure why. I think it's probably always been there that people feel they can't. I know one thing that happens for me is that even when Kellen Cat gets really cross with me, and she does every now and again, I know she loves me. And I absolutely know that in here. And so I can sort of say, not now, stop, I need the space. And she'll go off and she'll sometimes look a bit huffy, and cats are very good at looking huffy. And it's okay. I know she hasn't stopped loving me, but I know in my past, I've had times when I've sort of said, not now, I need the space. And the person hasn't spoken to me for a week. Particularly when you're a child or a teenager, that sort of thing happens, but it's a very child and teenager thing. But when you are one, you don't know that. And you can't respond with the experience that we now have. And when somebody turns off from you, shuns you, it feels as though that is almost putting a cage around you, in a sense that you've got to behave like this or I won't talk to you.
And I get what you're saying about animals, because this is the thing. That's why horses are often used in equine assisted therapy, because people then can see that a horse will get angry with another horse and they'll come at them with a little nip or a bit of a kick. And if that other horse doesn't listen, they'll ramp up the volume. But then when the other horse listens, they walk off and then they come back and they're best friends.
Yep.
And they'll be grooming each other again.
Yeah.
Because we have a cerebral cortex as human beings. And supposedly that makes us more intelligent and more creative and all of these things, but it also gets in the way. Because it can mean that we hold grudges, we hold baggage, which animals don't tend to do. They tend to stay in the present moment. So your cat, you say, no, not now, and she goes off and she sits in the corner, she looks a bit huffy. 5 minutes later, she's kind of forgotten all about that, and she's back going, can I sit on your lap again?
Yeah, I'm not sure it says she'd forgotten about it, but
she'll put it aside.
We both have this space thing that, this is my space now and this is my space now. And I can get in her space and I'll come along and I want to cuddle and I get, not now from her. It's quite a definite meow sort of thing. Like, I don't want it. And oh, sorry, and move back as you would with your friend. But then she knows when I've got the space and when I haven't. Sometimes she wants to be in my space, although she knows I haven't really got it, but her need is quite strong. But then we have that with each other as well, don't we?
And I think cats are so sensitive, and cats are so good at picking up on energy that isn't as it could be. When we're not very balanced. So if we're stressed and thinking, I've got to get this, like you give the example of a bank thing, you want to do your statements or whatever it is, and you're thinking, oh, they will pick up on that. And I know from when I had a cat before, she would always pick those times. You've been on there too long. Come on.
Yeah. Time. Too. Yeah. Yeah.
Or she would come in and she had this way of just sitting there, which meant put that down, go for a lie down. I want to lie on you and we can snuggle together.
Yeah.
And they're so good at that they're so good. No boundaries. We're stopping now.
Yeah. 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 And I find that really helps, because I'm sure everybody feels like this, that I want to do this work. I want to get this finished. I want to get this done. And actually you're getting more and more like shut in your head, because you're just like on a treadmill. And you're not actually able to think so clearly. So you actually do need to get up and walk around the garden or have a cup of tea or do some washing up or lie down and cuddle the cat, and you will feel better and you will work better after that time.
And that's us imprisoning ourselves. We're shutting down. But I think as well, certainly for myself, it comes from past experience where, like for me, I remember being brought up and I always had to like do my homework before I could watch telly.
Yeah.
So it was always do, or as a friend of mine calls it, eat the frog. Do the stuff you don't want to do, get that done, get it out of the way.
Yeah.
But when you get to being an adult, there isn't that set time of homework, finish homework, now you can play. Because there's always stuff to do on your to-do list as an adult, isn't there? And particularly if you run your own business or anything, it never stops.
Yeah.
And consequently, we might never stop unless we set up those boundaries. And if we don't do that, we're shutting our world down smaller and smaller. We're not free and we're not able to make those choices, even able to see those choices, because we become so, as a colleague of mine calls it, foveal, just so blinkered and so focused on the thing we think we have to do. But then there's the question of, if you didn't do it,
what's going to happen?
What's going to fall apart? Yeah. If you had to put it aside, can you come back to it, or will it even matter? If your house was burning down, would you still be doing that because you have to, or would you be making a different choice? Because
exactly so. And this is a sort of freedom that I think is people don't understand properly. And yes, there's a freedom to go out when I want to, freedom to meet who I want to, this kind of thing. Yeah. And that's very necessary. But it's this freedom we give ourselves, isn't it?
The inner freedom.
Myself in here. Am I still living someone else's script, which is a prison? I don't need that script anymore. I don't need to finish my homework before I can watch TV.
And even if we sit with that and think, how does that feel? Because I love just getting into your body and how does that feel? Like just listening to what you've just said. What does it feel like that I have to do this? What does it feel like? No, I've got freedom. I get to choose.
Yeah.
And that sense of liberation, that sense of, I sometimes think of it like this big, wet, ugly, smelly, horrible, heavy overcoat.
Yeah.
That's restrictive because it's not mine. It's somebody else's, like you said, somebody else's script. And when I can take that off, that sense of liberation and freedom is just incredible. Yeah. If you think of, even I sometimes think to say to people, take a backpack or something, and every single thing that you know is on your to-do list or whatever, put a pebble in that bag. Yeah. And initially it doesn't feel very heavy and you're fine, I can carry this all day. And then, oh, it's beginning to get quite heavy and my shoulders are getting quite sore. And then you take it off and it almost feels like you float.
Yes.
Because it's that contrast.
Move up, don't you?
It's that sense of expansion.
Yeah.
That you don't realize you've been standing like this and you can't breathe properly. Your heart is closed. And then all of a sudden, whoa.
Ooh. Yeah. Yeah.
It's that thing as well of we don't realize how good we really could feel.
Yeah. Partly because it's probably such a long time ago since we did. For many people, particularly nowadays, when everybody's got so much stress and so many things that you really do have to do if you still want to eat or have a roof, kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's really sort of hard. But I'm really amused by the backpack idea because it's something that I've actually done with students and clients when they've come on retreats. And because my retreats are always out in the wild in the country somewhere. And we don't have to camp out there, but we'll go out there and walk in it. And so everybody's got some kind of day sack that they bring. And so I've actually done that exercise. And sort of like the night before was, what are the limiting factors that you feel? And so you put a pebble in for each of them. And then pick up each other's backpack and feel the difference in weight. Quite often there isn't that much difference in it because everybody seems to carry a lot. Now, okay, tomorrow you're going to carry that all day, plus your food, plus, you know, your bottle of water and plus a raincoat in case it does. Oh. Right. Well, what do you actually not need for tomorrow's walk that you could take out of the sack? And of course, it's all the pebbles. And it's such an exercise to do with people because it makes it physical, makes it real.
And tangible, yeah.
Very much. Yeah. Yeah. And it's suddenly, oh, there are all those limitations that I thought I needed, all those things that I thought I needed to do, had to do. Actually, I don't. And tomorrow, you know, I'm not going to have a chance to answer my emails. I'm not going to have a chance to look at the bank. I'm not going to have a chance to do this. I'm actually going to be out by the river watching the herd of deer on the hill across from me. And it's almost like it's like gets that idea of freedom into you. You do not need to carry these things. Some of them you might want to pick up again, you know, like we all need to pick up our bank account now and again, and it's important, but you don't need to carry the fear of, am I overdrawn at this minute? Am I overdrawn at this minute? Am I overdrawn at this minute? With you all the day or even all the week. So it's like putting things in their place. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, what animals do.
I think so.
Because they can just put something down.
Yeah.
I don't need that right now.
No.
And your cat might decide to pick that up again. She's still got the wrong laptop on her lap. And I just need to remind her about that.
Excuse me, it is my turn.
Yes. But in between,
yeah,
she can go off and do other things.
Yeah.
Whatever she likes to do.
Yeah. And it must be the same. I mean, I haven't had horses for years and years and years, but I've got friends who do. And it's the same with your horse. Times they actually want you around, and other times, but go away. I'm quite enjoying being under this tree. I'm quite enjoying this grass, you know.
Very much.
Whatever.
Particularly the mare. If she doesn't want to be around you, she'll walk away.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I'm just having my own little space here. She loves her own space.
Yeah.
So, and I think maybe she was a cat in a previous life. She'll just go away, spend some time, and then when she's ready, she'll come over and she'll ask for a scratch and she'll let you know where. Whereas the boy, he just wants in your face all the time. He doesn't know even to walk away, even if he's getting anxious because of his trauma from the past. He's quite traumatized. Yeah. But he doesn't know that he can walk away if he's anxious. He does know now that if he's anxious, he can come to me, which is nice because you get the sense that he feels safe with me. Yeah. And if he's anxious, he comes to look for that safety. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's so important too. And I think a lot of people sort of think, oh, you've been traumatized if you've just come back from Iraq, or you've just been in an earthquake, or your boat sank underneath you, or something like that. Yes, you will be. Absolutely. But there are, oh, that doesn't matter. That wasn't really important. You know, I scraped the car. Actually, it hurt you inside, and you're worried about things and concerned. And it isn't something that you can brush off without actually taking it through its own process. And okay, it's not on the same level as an earthquake or something, but it has still affected you. And so I think, you know, unless something is this big, perhaps you're not allowed to be affected by it. And there's that's nothing, you can get over that.
Yeah. And we've been taught that, haven't we? I mean, when I was a child, it was about starving children in Africa. You have food. You know, don't complain. You have food to eat, and it's good food. Think of the starving children in Africa and other comparisons that would have been made to and I can see why my parents, my teachers, etc. did that, because a sense of proportion is good, and to be thankful for what you've got is good. But at the same time, if you are upset about something, if something has impacted on you and hurt you deeply, it's important to recognize that.
It is.
And we do, because of the conditioning we've had, we minimize.
Mm.
And then we don't appreciate and acknowledge the upset and the hurt that we're feeling. We push it down.
Yeah.
I'm not supposed to feel that because everything actually in my life is so much better than in everybody else's, and my trauma is so much smaller than everybody else's. But the trauma I've experienced is the trauma I've experienced, and it's impacted on me. And as Gabor Mate says, trauma isn't what happens to you, it's your response to what happens to you. And he also says that the trauma that we think of as trauma, so the things that you talked about, the impact of a war or domestic violence or something like that, that isn't trauma. The real trauma was what happened when you had a disconnection.
Yeah.
Your very first disconnection, which was probably with a caregiver. And
Yes.
It wasn't their fault,
no.
but they were parenting probably the way they'd parented.
Yeah.
They were giving parenting the way they'd received parenting.
Yeah.
And I look back now, because I'm writing my book at the moment, and thinking of things that my dad did and suddenly going, oh my goodness, he probably did that because he didn't get the appropriate support from his parents. So one example was, I was watching Lassie Come Home, you know, the movie.
Oh, I remember it.
My age away, the movie Lassie Come Home. I cried buckets at that movie.
Me too. Yes.
Because it was an animal and she was hurt. Well, it was a male dog apparently in the movie, but she was hurt and she, you know, all of those things. And she was so amazing and my heart was bleeding and I was bawling my eyes out, and my dad came in and he yelled at me.
Yeah.
And he would say things like, don't cry, stop crying, or I will give you something to cry about. That doesn't make sense. If you give me something to cry about, I will cry more, not cry less.
Yeah.
So I was in fear, plus confusion, plus didn't know how to respond, and having to push down all my emotions. So putting me in a box and you know, feeling like I couldn't be myself.
Yeah.
And that disconnected me from him, but it also disconnected me from me.
Yes.
From my true nature. And that's what Gabor Mate says is the true wound. We're disconnected from our caregiver, but it makes us ultimately disconnect from ourselves because we don't feel we can be authentic, coming back to the saying no. Because if we are, we'll lose the attachment, we'll lose the care that we're dependent on when we're that age. And that's what makes us vulnerable to the thing that we think of as trauma, the domestic abuse and all those other things. But it really does depend, because I have a colleague who was held up at gunpoint, didn't bother her, because she'd been on a retreat. I can't remember where she was, somewhere overseas. She'd been on a retreat and had learnt so much about herself and done so many things to stand in her power. And then she got held up at gunpoint and she just used that power. Yeah. But because she managed to rescue herself in that situation, it wasn't a trauma. Yeah. Because she processed it in the moment.
Absolutely. Yeah. And she hadn't disconnected.
No, she was completely connected.
She was totally connected.
She was reconnected from the traumas that she'd had previously as a child or whatever through that retreat. Yeah. Which meant that the holding up at gunpoint, that's a breeze. Yeah. Yeah. So it's very much where we are, our awareness of choices, whether we feel stuck in that box or we feel that expansion. Indeed. That we can actually stand in our power. So are we disconnected or not? Are we free or not? And being free is about that being connected again. And I come from this witchy magic shaman background, as you know, people on here know. And one of the things that is in all of these magical practices is what's commonly known as soul retrieval. Well, an awful lot of that is actually about when this thing has happened, like happened with you and your dad and Lassie, and you disconnected from the part of you that was hurting because of Lassie, because of the film that you were seeing, because of what you were seeing. So that part was just like gone, disconnected. You need to cut it out. Yeah. And what we do, and I do this with clients, and I've done this as a psychotherapist as well, is you help them to bring that part back and reconnect to it.
because it wasn't wrong to cry about a film. We've all done it. And actually, it's really good for you because it really just brings out your humanity, your whole natural self that can connect with everything else. But we do disconnect from the bits that we've been told somehow or another. Don't do that. Wrong to do that. And, you know, I remember my parents never actually said it to me, but I know people who did. It's like, you stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. And which is this, whoa, you know, hang on a minute. That's sort of really.
But then is that what his parents said?
Exactly. Well, it will have been, almost certainly.
And I can understand
Totally.
why a parent might think that was a good thing to do.
Yeah.
Toughen you up. Because my dad said to me, it's a big bad world out there. So that helped as well. I felt so scared about this big bad world I was going out into at some point in my future. But he was, I expect, trying to toughen me up so
Absolutely.
that I had the resilience to go out there.
Yeah.
But I love Brene Brown, who talks about not armoring up, not puffing up, having a strong back, a soft front, and a wild heart.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, we do go out there in a suit of armor, and it people can't get in.
No,
they can't get into our heart, and it's heavy, it's restrictive. It's not free. It's a cage. It's a cage. Mobile, maybe, but it's a cage.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And I quite agree again. And what you were just describing there, the suit of armor and getting into it. And yes, I mean, I've done it myself. We've all done it. And it reminds me of, I did quite a lot of work on alchemy as a sideline amongst friends when I was at university and then later. And one of the pictures in the old alchemical books is there's the male, masculine, in a black suit of armor on a black horse like this. And the female, the feminine side, is white, naked, on a white horse. And the whole point of that is like, sometimes you may need this. Most of the time you'll need this, but you have to understand that it's the two. Sometimes you do need to defend. Yeah. I'm not saying you don't, you do. But again, we're back to the choices. Do you know when you're needing to defend? Do you know when you've accidentally put the suit of armor on when you didn't mean to?
It's that flexibility and resilience, isn't it? And choice, like you say. So knowing I have a toolkit. I have spanners of all sizes and shapes and lengths, and I am the one, as the engineer, who's able to choose which spanner for which job, which tool for which job.
Yeah. Yeah.
And use them appropriately. I don't need a sledgehammer to crack a nut.
No, indeed. And I think that's so important. And again, we're not given or shown or educated with a toolbox for that kind of thing. We might be educated in a toolbox for mathematics or something, or doing history or English or whatever. And you think, well, yeah, that's really interesting and fun. And I like doing that in my spare time. But it'd be really useful if I had this toolbox that knew how to respond when somebody shouted at me for crying in a film.
And if you think that they say we have a short window in which optimum, it's not to say that we can't later, but in which we can learn language. Yeah. And if you have parents who have different languages, first languages, then you can be bilingual or trilingual. If you live, with mum speaks one, dad speaks another, and I live in a culture that speaks another. Yeah. But that's the optimum window for that. Yeah. So that's when it's really good to learn language if you get that opportunity. But is that not just an emotional language to learn how to speak that? Why don't we get supported in that optimum window so that we then have those tools? Yeah. So I think it's great that now kids are learning mindfulness, they're learning meditation, they're given options so that they know they have choices. I love that there's a video that goes around every so often with a teacher sitting by the doorway to the classroom, and she has this sign up beside on the door frame. Do you want a high five? Do you want a fist pump? Do you want a hug? Do you want to just, hey, wave? What do you want? It's your choice. And you can have a different thing each day. You can change your mind, whatever. But it's your choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because so often for kids, they don't have a choice. Come in, sit down, read that book. Do that math problem.
Yeah. Or, stand up because the teacher's come in. Sit down. And you go, why? And you don't know why. And somebody says it's being respectful. And so you spend the whole of your life afterwards sort of jumping up and down in chairs when people walk in and out of rooms. Really?
They used to.
They used to indeed. And it's the emotional things that we need to learn, like, this is really affecting me. This is really hurting me. Or I'm so happy about this. I'm absolutely over the moon about this. I saw a woodpecker today or something, and it's absolutely blowing my mind. Well, it's only a bird.
Or even that I'm both.
Yeah.
Because so often we think, I can't be two things at once.
Yeah.
I can't be happy and sad.
Yeah.
And I see that in a lot of the work around grief and grieving, and I'm sure you've seen it as well, where somebody has died, a very close, very loved person has died, and I laugh. I shouldn't do that. Of course you can do that.
Yeah.
We are all of this mix and match of emotions.
Yeah.
And they can come up randomly. And if you laugh, that's fine. If you cry, that's fine. If you sit quietly, that's fine. Just whatever you're feeling, it just is, and it's fine.
It is. You made me remember when my stepmother died. It was really, I had her far, far longer than my mother. So I've had two mothers in a sense. And we were there. I was there with my husband. We were starting to go through her things and do this sort of thing. And I took her checkbook out of the drawer and where she kept it. And it's like, and I suddenly burst into tears. It's a checkbook. But there was so much, I can't even explain it, that just made me burst into tears. And then another time we were sorting through some other stuff, and something that I read in one of her old letters, I thought, well, should I keep it or not? And it suddenly reminded me of jokes she used to tell. And so I told Paul, and we were both there cracking up again about Mum's jokes. And it was absolutely fine. Fortunately, both of us, well, by that time we were okay with anything like that. And so we felt that was a real celebration of her. We're remembering you. It was great, wasn't it? We're remembering you. That was great, wasn't it?
And even then, the sadness, it's just another expression of your love for her.
It is, yeah.
Yes, it makes you cry, and yes, it hurts.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's an upwelling of love.
Yeah.
Even
and
though you're crying.
I won't be able to do that with you anymore. Yeah. You're fine. I'm fine. But that's gone.
Yeah, but I enjoy that. I love that, and I'm going to miss it.
I do. It's something that I find when I'm helping people find themselves, stand in their power, do this sort of thing. And we can go through memories, and particularly I love doing it when we're doing the tell your story work. And people come and they've got something that really hurt. And that's the memory that they need to be working around on this particular journey. And they get into something which somebody was telling me the other day. It's called this 90-second rule. You've got 90 seconds to get over it. And I was there, so like, no, not with me. No, I don't think I work that way. And there's no, as you were saying, there's no re-experiencing of the person. There's no allowing the upwelling of love. There's no allowing the upwelling of sorrow, of shame, of pain, of whatever it was, and actually letting that through. And then saying, thank you, and being able to, as I put it in the compost caddy. Because you've done it, you've had it, you've thanked it, and you can now let it go. But then things have gone. and they're not lurking in some deep place. We only gave me 90 seconds, so I'm going to come out now.
Yeah, because it's another form of prison, isn't it? You have this limitation. It's 90 seconds or you've missed it.
Exactly.
And what do you do with it if you've missed it? Because you can't say, I don't think it will work for me either, that you have to do it within 90 seconds. And I think we used to have 1 year back in Victorian times. The widow would dress in black for a year. She'd wear all of her jet black jewelry and all of that stuff. And in a sense, that was good because you had that year and people would respect that year and your needs within that year.
Yeah.
And then you moved on with your life. You moved forward with your life. And there is a place for that, I think.
I do.
And it gives us that time. Maybe it worked in a sense that we were allowed to experience all of those things, to work through all of those things within that year. Whereas now you don't have that time. And kind of you've got support and people around you and maybe bringing you meals and stuff up to the funeral, and then everybody drifts back to their own life.
Yeah.
Because we don't have that mourning period anymore. So you just are expected to kind of fit back in when you're ready.
Yeah.
But if you're not ready, and if you don't get that chance
immediately, that's over. The funeral's over, so you can be normal again now.
That's closure. That's it, done. Move on.
And it does not work like that. And
not for most people,
you will end up with back of those pebbles again. You're still carrying those pebbles of the things that you hadn't quite finished in 90 seconds, probably hadn't even started in 90 seconds.
Well, this is the thing with the funeral, because you're so busy and it's still also fresh and so raw that you get to the funeral and that's your kind of, yes, it has happened. It's your reality closure, but it's not your emotional closure. That is when your emotional stuff starts, because you've been too busy and you've had too many things to do and you couldn't even get your head around it up to that point. But that's the point at which people drift off back to
you lose the support, and you can do, and we don't allow enough time. And so, as you say, we imprison ourselves in this time. You've got to have done it in your 90 seconds. You've got to have done it by this time. You've done it by the weekend. You'll be okay on Monday. And life doesn't work like that. And nature doesn't work like that, as we both well know. And animals don't work like that either. And they allow time, which can be quite short, but they do give themselves time for a change.
And I think it's shorter when we give ourselves the time. We think this is because we don't have a time scale, we don't have a timeline of knowing when it's going to get better. And this is the same whether it's grief or disease. And maybe we're treating grief like, well, we do sometimes treat grief like a disease, don't we? But we think that I just need to be better. I need to go back to work on Monday. I need to be better by Monday. Rather than thinking, I just need to take whatever time and space I need, which is what an animal will do. They'll just go and curl up in a corner somewhere and sleep a lot and take that time that they need. And then when they feel better, they go back to doing things as they feel ready. But we just push ourselves so often. And then we don't get better. And we think maybe, oh, I'm feeling better enough and I'll just carry on. But then it's the pebbles again. They come back up, don't they?
You're starting carrying all these pebbles and you're ending up, the whole health thing is sliding downhill. The whole mental health thing is sliding. And you end up, because it's never been dealt with, the second round of it makes it worse, and then the third round of it, and
because it's cumulative. We haven't got rid of the first load of pebbles. We've just added more and then more.
And that's just so important to me. I think that we need to allow ourselves choice and be free enough. I do not need to do this because somebody told me, or because I read it in a book somewhere, or because my coach said. And I don't care how good your coach is, even if it's me or even if it's Robyn, though we're not likely to say it, that you give yourself time. You allow yourself to say, am I ready for this? And if somebody says, "Go, oh, come on, yes you are, of course you are," and you don't actually feel that, you actually say, "No, I'm not ready for it yet." I
But I
had it
think
once when
that
I was driving. I was doing a refresher driving course. I hadn't driven for 20 odd years when I was in London because there's no point. And so I thought, oh, I better have a few lessons just to remind myself where everything is. And we were driving along this road, and the instructor was a bit of a twit, really. But he was okay. I managed. And we came to this corner, and he said, "Oh, put your foot down. This is a 50-mile-an-hour corner." I said, "Not for me, it isn't." He said, "Yes, it is." I said, "No, it is for you, not for me." And nobody had ever said that to him in his life. And so needless to say, I was not whizzing around it at 50 miles an hour at that time because I didn't feel I could. And that is it's such a little thing, you know, you think, oh, he's just helping you. He's just, you know, cheering you up, telling you you can and you're good enough. And you think, yeah, but I didn't feel it.
And there is a certain amount of place for, you can do this.
Oh,
but
yeah.
at the same time, it kind of goes back to that thing we were talking about before about respect. And it's us respecting ourselves and us finding the ways, if we have been through situations that have taught us not to trust ourselves and to not pay attention to how we feel and what our instinct and our intuition is telling us, how do we get back? And you were talking about soul retrieval. I love Neil Donald Walsh talks about remembering.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I've been doing that for years.
Bringing back in, remembering,
putting your
reintegrating,
members
making it,
back together. Yeah.
putting all of the parts of ourselves, all the members of our body back, spiritual body, whatever, back together again. And I think if we are struggling with that, if we're struggling with connecting in with ourselves and knowing what's right for me as an individual, not what I've been told and not what society's conditioning says or anything else, not what my driving instructor is telling me, but me, I'm the one in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
I am the decider on where to go, how fast to go there, what is right for me. If I want to pull over and take 10 minutes to look at the scenery, that's down to me. But if we don't feel able to do that, that's the point that maybe it would be good to reach out for help and not to be ashamed of that.
Absolutely. I was just feeling the same thing as you were talking. And also to say, I was talking with some women on another podcast about how safe it can be to go for coaching, to go for counseling, to go for help. And I said, do go for the chemistry first. I don't care whether they've got alphabet soup after their name and a degree from Harvard or whatever. But if the chemistry between you works, the rest of it probably will. And nobody who's helping you in the sort of jobs that Robyn and I do will ever push you where you don't want to go. And instead of sort of saying, go on, put your foot down, it's a 50-mile-an-hour corner. So, well, it certainly can be done. Do you not feel ready for that yet? Do you want to give it a go? Should we go about it again? Try it again? Which is such a different way of saying it.
And I've written a blog on tips for finding a practitioner that you want to work with. And it's exactly that. It's look for the person that you feel safe with.
Yeah.
Because if you don't feel safe right from the outset, you can't bring your stuff there anyway.
No.
You can't explore. And it's where we don't feel safe, where we need to explore. So we have to have somebody who will hold what we feel is a safe space for us. Yeah. Who we can connect with, who will hold that connection for us until we're ready and able to do it. So somebody who can show us maybe that the corner can be taken at 50 miles an hour, but not expect us to do it on our first lesson.
No, exactly so. And it's that kind of feeling that you need to have with somebody. Am I safe, or are they going to make me scared?
Yeah.
And there's a difference between feel the fear and do it anyway, which can be quite exciting. And when you think, no, 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 and you go all rigid and stiff.
And if you have somebody who's going to be there going, not go on, put your foot down, do it, but let's do this together.
Yeah.
Let's make it fun and let's do it together. I know it's a little bit scary sighting.
Yeah.
But it's also fun when we do.
Would you like to try it? Shall we swap seats and I'll show you? And, you know, if they're a good driving instructor, they explain what they're doing and when they're putting their foot down, when they're taking it off, or the rest of the stuff that goes with that. But you're feeling, oh, actually, that wasn't so bad. Yeah. I didn't realize that was 50 miles an hour. I didn't realize that's what 50 miles an hour felt like.
Yeah.
I had an idea of 50 miles an hour. And I think my idea was like 500 miles an hour. And actually, it's nothing like that, you know?
Yeah.
And you want a counselor or a coach who is going to be like that. And this, let's do it together. This is a journey we're going together.
And we're going together as equal partners as well. Because I think if somebody's in the role of practitioner, coach, therapist, wherever, there's still another human being.
Yeah.
They might have alphabet soup, and they might have experience that's different from mine, but I'm the only one who knows my body and my experience and my emotions and all of that. So I'm my expert. Yeah, they're expert on what they do, but I'm my expert on me. And that when that comes together and works together, that's, I think, where the magic lies. It
does, and that magic of expansion again, sort of like, oh, I've never done it like that. Well, shall we have a go? And it's, oh, well, you know, maybe I can. Never eaten Chinese food before. Well, I'll give it a try.
And also a coach, therapist who will listen, and if the person says, actually, that doesn't work for me, okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
What would?
Yeah.
What would you feel happier with, safer with? Do you want to break it down into steps? Do you want to go in a different
or even like, what was it that feels scary or bad or whatever for you? And but not say it in a sort of overpowering sort of way, but sort of like, tell me about that, because I don't feel like that. So can you tell me so I can know?
It's the curiosity again. And it's not the why question, because that can come across as being judgmental. But just tell me, how is it for you? What are you feeling? What are you experiencing? And what would work for you? What would be good for you? What would support you?
And
what do you need?
Like you said, it's not the why question can be quite accusatory in counselling.
They certainly can feel that way, even if they're not intended that way.
Yeah, and indeed. And it's either going, I don't know why.
Yes, rabbit in the headlights.
Absolutely rabbit in the headlights. When people ask me that kind of question, I do tend to go rabbit in the headlights. If you say, what was it about that wasn't working? And it's sort of the what is much more useful in that situation than the why.
Yeah, the curiosity question. That's really interesting. Can you tell me a little bit more about?
Yeah, indeed. And once you can get to that state, then you get to feeling free. And then even when it's pouring down the rain outside and you've left the washing out and the cat or the dog, grub is even worse, comes in sopping wet and covered in mud all over the floor that you have just washed.
Just washed, of course.
Of course. It's like, really? Okay. What do we do now? Do I even bother to clear it up, or do I actually just wrap the dog in a towel and cuddle? And you have this choices that are not, I ought to clean that floor again. I ought to.
And the whatever it is that presses the buttons that makes you angry, if that's the reaction, and that's fine, if that's the reaction that comes up, that's the reaction that comes up. Anger is just an emotion, it just is. But then what is it? Get curious about my own anger. What made me feel angry? What button did that press for me? Why did I respond that way? Did I need to respond that way? Is there another option?
Yeah.
And quite often for me, because like you were saying earlier about joy and having choices, if I find myself doing that, I look inside and go, well, where's the funny side of this?
Yeah, because yes, definitely.
Talking about this now, we can look at, do you remember that day? It was pouring outside, the washing was hanging on the line, the dog came in, covered in mud, and just walked all over the floor that I'd only just cleaned.
Yeah.
That's a funny story.
And it is a funny story. And
it might not feel particularly funny at the moment when I'm in there, but if I can take a step back and go, this is a really funny story, and I'm going to be able to tell my husband when he gets home, and we'll have a laugh about this.
Yeah, exactly so. And it's, again, it's distance. You're not in here. You've got a bit of perspective, and freedom gives you that. And choices.
And as soon as you laugh, the whole thing changes anyway.
Absolutely, it does. So we recommend freedom.
We do. And joy.
I want to finish with that quote again. I think it'd be nice to take it the full circle.
Let me just bring that back up again. If I can. Yes, it's from Robert Bligh, and he says, "To be wild is not to be crazy or psychotic. True wildness is a love of nature, a delight in silence, a voice free to say spontaneous things, and an exuberant curiosity in the face of the unknown." And I love that as well, where he's talking about the unknown, because so often we can be afraid of that, can't we? It can feel scary and frightening, but when we can know actually that if I'm wild, I'm okay. And Brene Brown talks about going out into the wilderness, which is the unknown.
Yeah.
But she finishes off by saying, "But we are the wilderness." And I think we talked before about the storm, didn't we?
We did.
And that we are the storm. That is our power. We have that level of elemental power and creative power.
Yeah, we do indeed. So, from Wild Inside, go out into the unknown for next month, and we will see you when we come out of the unknown again. Bye for now.
Bye for now.